Not my fault, I swear.
You're live. Okay, we're here.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're early. I don't think anybody's on the edge of their seat.
Totally
3:56,
fine.
just rearing to go, except for
You
us. We're
know,
here.
yeah, we're here. But to answer your question, yes, Scotch is my preferred alcohol of choice. It was actually my first drink.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a fun fact. Good Ethan
My
lore.
my family has some Scottish heritage, and so like my aunt and uncle help with a Scottish festival every year, and they play bagpipes and
Oh,
uh, do all sorts of stuff. And one
there you
year
go.
they did a Scotch auction, which I think they do every year. But one year, like every member of my family bought a different bottle, and they were like, "You should drink Scotch with us." I was like, "All right, well, if you say so."
If you say so. I did that. That happened in. I don't remember how old I was. I was probably like 14 or something. We were in
I was
Mexico.
15 when this happened, so
Yeah, we did a tour of a tequila factory, and
hmm
afterwards they were giving tequila to everybody, and my dad gave me one. Is like, come on. It's like, okay,
not gonna say
interesting.
no.
Yeah. Um, but I think technically the first thing I tried was just beer because my dad was a brewer. Um,
Oh, like a home brewer or like a
no,
professional
like
brewer?
a professional brewer
Oh, neat.
at I believe Full Sail Brewery. He brewed for a while,
Hmm.
brewed beer in like Lake Tahoe, parts of Oregon. Yeah,
Cool.
that's it's a fun
You
fact.
decided not to pursue the brewing um,
Well,
family
I mean,
name.
he stopped actually doing it.
Okay.
Wait, like I think a little before I was born. I think we have a cool picture of him up in the rafters of the brewery,
hmm
on like in like a magazine from I think that was from like 1997 or something.
hmm
No, that was he was younger in that picture. Sorry, no, he was younger in that picture. But yeah, something like he stopped brewing a little before I was born because he wanted to pursue a more lucrative career to support his family and that sort of thing. So
Fair enough.
um, yes, adult stuff, you know. I'm interested in brewing. I would love to know how and like actually do it, but I don't have any interest in like professionally doing it.
Yeah. I actually, one summer, I just did like a weekend internship at a brewery. Just like helped for a couple days just to sort of see what it was like.
Cool. Did you like in the brewery part or like another part?
Like in the brewery part, like
Oh, cool.
helping to hook up the hoses between the different tanks and actually like transfer the green beer over
Nice.
and then add the yeast or like stir the mash, all sorts of
Thoughts on the
stuff.
smell?
It sticks when you're closed.
It sticks with you.
It does. It's like a bit of like a musky smell.
Hmm. Sort of. It's definitely hard to explain unless you.
Yeah,
It's very like clear when you smell it.
yeah. Smells are complicated. Smells are really hard to put
Hmm.
into words.
Smell-o-vision.
Hmm
We'll have it sometime.
Someday.
Before we get into the questions here, say hello to the chat. Hello, fellow human. That is their username.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then Courtney
I thought
Taylor.
it was just your salutations.
Yeah, there is
Salutations, fellow human.
fellow human. I am also a human,
Yes.
fellow human. But Courtney here is asking the very first chat message. They seem very worried about the subjunctive in Spanish.
Oh, that's
It's like,
fun.
have you mastered it?
Ah,
Um, Honestly, it's not that bad. Like once you get used to understanding it, I really don't think it's that big of a struggle, especially because the most common times it gets used are like trigger words. Like there's certain times that you just say the subjunctive, right? Um,
I think for me, what really made the subjunctive much, much harder was the explanations about the subjunctive,
yeah.
because people explain it as this like, oh, it's this like hypothetical or like fantastical thing. And so then you start to think of like, okay, well, is this situation hypothetical? And then you say it, but then you realize there's actually like three or four different things that are hypothetical in
Hmm.
like the conditional is also used in hypothetical. So you can't
Exactly.
use the hypotheticalness as a actual descriptor that is specific to the subjunctive. And I actually found that the explanations trying to like put some sort of like mental model around it actually just made me much more confused about what it was. Um, I like Ben said there are trigger words for it or trigger phrases. Uh, there's not that many of them. There's only like 10, 15 in the
I,
whole.
I wouldn't know, but yeah.
Yeah, if you just learn the trigger phrases, then you cover like 90% of subjunctive usage.
Mhm.
So I would just recommend studying the triggers.
Yeah.
Honestly, we should just write a blog post about what are the triggers for subjunctive because there's really not that many of them.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty easy to understand. It gives very slightly different vibes. It's the hype around it is definitely the worst thing.
Yeah.
The uh, the other thing they asked about was imperfect preterite. That one is there is, but that again, you kind of just have to learn the cases when it's one is used versus the other.
I forget
I
which
don't.
one's imperfect preterite.
Yeah, I don't either. I just know which ones you should say this way, which ones you should say that way. Um, and you figure it out pretty quickly when it sounds wrong or when it looks wrong. Um, it can seem really complicated, especially if you don't fully understand it. But once you understand it, it is a lot easier. Um, yeah, Hulk's in the chat as well. Yeah, preterite imperfect is a lot harder than the subjunctive. But
Yeah.
again, I feel like the descriptions are the worst part about learning it. Like the English descriptions are so much more annoying. I came across that with Czech too, which is why I rewrote everything a lot simpler without big grammar words, just being like, okay, so this is what this is trying to say. This is sort of how you do it. Easy.
Yeah. I think the with the I assume imperfect preterite is like continuous, like comia versus um, com,
Komi?
comi.
I
Um,
believe so, yeah.
that's yeah. So again, this is another area where the explanations actually get in the way. Where like I've read explanations in like English to Spanish grammar books that try to create this sort of like, oh, it's a continuous action or it's a repeated action, and those it's like a decent a, approximation of it. And then I'll read like grammar texts in Spanish, and they'll specifically say like, oh, you're mapping it to this English. It's usually mapped to this English thing, which is actually not an appropriate concept to map to, and so you have to think about it in like a different way. Um, but yeah, again, you kind of just get used to it as you use it, and eventually you just kind of develop a feeling for it, and then those grammar explanations just make a lot more sense later on. It's been a while since I've
Yeah.
read the grammar, so I'm like struggling to remember all the rules for it.
I like one specific case that really like sort of just like solidified it for me was when I wanted to talk about when I was a kid, I would sort candy,
Mhm.
right? And I said it like when I was a kid, I sorted candy, like literally in Spanish. And then the Spanish speaker I was talking to was like, "Oh, that's where you should use the the other one, the ABBA one." And I was like, "Oh, I get it now." Because I would be okay. We're on the like. There's a
Yeah.
certain point where it like the vibe just clicks, and you go, "Oh, I know what I wanted to say, what I wanted to mean, and what they understood, and what they knew that I was supposed to have said." And then like it just makes so much more sense then.
Yeah.
Like that was I don't know last year, and it just like solved the problem. I feel for me.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that people want to have like a mental model to use on day one,
Hmm.
like when they use it.
Yeah.
And you can get approximations of that, and that's what a lot of these grammar texts do, but they only get you, 75% of the way there, right? The remaining 25%, you really have to just trial and error it as you are absorbing the language. And eventually it will click without any specific explanation for it. It's
Hmm.
just, oh, right, okay, I understand how those two things are connected.
Yep. That's a lot of stuff in that can be applied to pretty much any language. It's not like a Spanish special thing as well.
Not
Not
just
that you
any
need to like
language, literally
simply
any
check.
skill.
Yeah. Start with the 20% explanation, get whatever you can, try to understand it a lot, make a bunch of mistakes, and then you'll figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's jump into the questions. We have some prepared questions here. Thank you for the
Oh, no.
question, Courtney.
I thought we were going to shoot the shit for a bit.
We'll be doing that later.
Oh, okay.
So let's start here with this first question from Earth Wildflower Heat. How long will it take to reach C2 with Refold? I've seen a lot of discussion about the time that it takes to reach functional fluency, but would love to hear your perspective on a high level of proficiency beyond just sort of basic functional fluency.
Yeah, so I think there's two different questions here. One of them is, how do you reach C2 level fluency, like unofficial C2 level fluency, where you are like very functional and confident in the language? Then there is, how do you pass the C2 test?
Yeah.
And like, how long does it take to do that? And the reason those are different is because the C2 test is very specific, and I have heard
Or
this
similar tests of the same level, N1 or
yeah, right,
SK, whatever it is.
yeah. I've even heard this from many people who like prepare others for the C2 test, that a native speaker generally would also need to study for a C2 test because it requires a level of knowledge about literature and the way that Spanish is structured in certain situations. So I was doing a course on C2 preparation last year, and one of the things she said is like, all three of the answers could be correct. It's just that one of them is going to be more correct than the other two.
Love that.
And so it's a level of nuance and sort of subtext of what you would expect to be in that, and that comes from an enormous amount of exposure to classical literature and formal writing and poetry and etc. So the actual skills on the C2 are separate from the ability to speak at a high native level, or at an equivalent a native level. So my guess is that they're referring to speaking at a high level and not actually taking the C2 test. But generally, if we were to answer both of these questions, C2 test, you probably would want, for something like Spanish, you probably want to put in, 2,000, 3,000 hours of just getting to that functional fluency, and then probably another 100 or 200 hours of studying for the test.
Test prep, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a C2 ability, so not the test part, definitely would take, for a related language, probably a couple thousand hours, maybe 3,000, just because there's a certain like amount of even culture that you need to get to like have a good conversation with like a native speaker from that place, without them really thinking that you're not native or not. So not that way. Sorry. What I mean to say here is like, there's a certain point where native speakers of the language don't really think about the fact that you're not native, even though it's clear that you are. Like, they're not convinced that you're actually a native speaker, but they don't care. It doesn't come up, and it's not like a problem. They don't go, oh, should I use a different word, or should I do I have to ask them to repeat themselves? Like, it's not a barrier. Getting to that point takes several thousand hours, 3,000 to 4,000 hours, something like that, plus just time with the language, like, or time using the language in that context, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think you also have to break down the time a little bit, because when you're talking about like how much speaking or writing time does it take, that is very large when you're talking about a C2 level. Whereas when we're talking about a functional fluency level, we're talking about 1,000 hours, 1,500 hours of input versus 100, 250 hours of output. And to get to that really strong comfort in being able to use the language in every domain that you want to be able to use it in, you are talking about, bringing that output ability up and investing an enormous amount of time in that output. So you're talking 500, 750 hours to be able to talk about all the things that you want to be able to talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Languages are
huge.
very big.
It's really important just to remember that languages are enormous.
Yeah, like, go around your house or your apartment or whatever and look for the most random, littlest things that you can, and be like, when am I ever going to learn the word for that? Like, how do I explain that thing that has a way that a native would explain it, that I could like be like, do this thing. It's hard. Or try giving somebody tech support or support in a thing that you know well in the other language. Like I give tech support sometimes in Spanish to friends,
Mhm.
and it is a lot. It's harder.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not as flexible to be like, yeah. So the button that's right next to the one up there in the top left corner, but like a little bit under, like it's a lot more. It's a lot. I stumble a lot more. We get through it, but like not as fluidly as I'd like. We
Yeah.
can say.
Um,
Anyways,
yeah. So, but generally, when you think about sort of vocabulary sizes, I like to. This isn't an exact metric because they don't actually publish any sort of estimates around how much vocabulary you need for each level, but it is generally assumed to be exponential. So you need essentially twice as much vocabulary at a C2 level than you need at a C1, twice as much at a C1 than a B2, twice as much at a B2 than a B1. So it doubles in your vocabulary every level. And generally, I would consider a C2, you need, I've seen estimates of around 15,000 words
yeah, that's
to
what I've
be
heard
able
too.
to really command yourself at a high level in the language. So a C1 would be around 8,000.
Cool. Well, thank you for the question. We'll go to the next one here from where's their name? Dave. Oh, this is the question from Dave about interface model of language acquisition. They asked this a couple of months ago, and we didn't know what it was, but we have done some reading, and
Well, Ben did some reading. I
yeah,
have been
I
off in my own world.
I wasn't going to say anything, um, but the interface model of acquisition, in summary, from what I've read, is basically what role does explicit knowledge play in the language acquisition process? And there are three general fields of thought. The non-interface position essentially is saying that your explicit knowledge about the language, knowing the names of grammar terms, explicitly knowing how things function, whatnot, is completely separate from your acquisition of the language. They do not overlap. This is what Krashen said in 1981, that explicit knowledge does not convert into implicit knowledge through immersion. They're just separate things. That's the non-interface position. Those two sides don't interface; they don't connect. The strong interface position says that over here we have your explicit knowledge is required. It directly leads into the implicit knowledge or acquisition. You have to know something explicitly before it can be converted to implicit knowledge. You have to actively learn it, and then it goes to the back of your mind. And then the third position, the weak interface position, is where they are connected, and explicit knowledge can be a facilitator in the process of acquisition and vice versa. Like they're connected. There's some highways between the two, but they are not like a direct influence on each other that has like a requirement. If you do some Googling, you can find various resources about this on Wikipedia. There's plenty of papers and that sort of thing. We are pretty strongly in the weak interface position camp, that having some knowledge of the language and doing some explicit study is beneficial and increases the speed of the acquisition process of the implicit learning that comes from being with the language, understanding the language, but it is not necessarily required to learn new things, right? Like we were talking at the very beginning about learning some grammar concepts in Spanish. It's helpful. We find it very helpful to learn a little bit about it and get like a rundown. But then you do have to go and turn that all into implicit knowledge, which can then make the explicit understanding easier. And they all sort of create this loop and a stronger ability in general. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we talk about a lot is awareness. That you need to be aware of something before it can be acquired. And so I guess my question, and I haven't done the research, so I don't know what the perspective is from the researchers, but do they consider awareness as conscious explicit knowledge, or do they consider that as part of the, because you can become aware of something without necessarily studying it
Mhm.
explicitly. And so, but you can also become aware of it by studying it explicitly. So,
That I think is why we're in that weak interface position. It can kind of just come up, or you can be told about it and then have it turn into acquisition.
yeah. But
But
I think I think both of the extremes, the ones where it has to be this or it has to be this, are generally, like in most things in life,
yeah,
neither of them are true. The
yeah.
extremes are generally not true. Um, but at least from our perspective and our opinion, either one of those approaches works as long as you do become aware of it, because awareness is the first step towards actually um, acquiring it.
Mhm.
And I've seen a model of sort of 4 stages of acquisition where sort of the awareness, um, conscious understanding, uh, unconscious understanding, and automatic understanding,
Mhm.
um, or automatic usage. At that point, honestly, you have to start extending into the actual usage of it in order to make it truly automatic. Um, but that's generally the model that we propose, is that we do front load everything consciously just because it's efficient, and then we convert that into sort of conscious comprehension in a
Mhm.
broader context.
I We don't necessarily front load everything.
No,
I
not
think
all at
it's
once.
important. We front load some stuff,
Yeah.
right, for efficiency's sake, but trying to front load everything is probably not a good way to go.
No, sorry. Yes, to clarify, do not try to front load
Yeah.
everything. That is
Okay.
that is not a good approach. Your brain will
Here's your
run out of space.
15,000 Alki parts and then start to immerse.
Yeah. But then moving on into unconscious understanding, which is sort of like high speed automatic, and then conscious usage, and then unconscious usage.
Mhm. Yep. That is generally the path and pattern that we follow and recommend. There is like some nuance to it because trying just to get some unconscious usage, then going into the conscious, but yeah, that's for another day.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
also talking about that process for every single piece of the language, right? It's not like the whole language goes through the whole process. So you're
It's
repeating
all
that
one thing.
thousands and thousands and thousands of times.
The language is one thing.
It's
Well, we got to that question, Dave. I hope that you're here.
only
And
been 2 months late, right?
yeah. All right. Next question here, which actually is a question we seeded a while ago, but we're tired of seeing it on our list. And the question is, do you need to aim to sound like a native speaker? We have a lot of people that, or even just in the entire language learning community, whose goal is native level or to sound like a native or something like that. And we wanted to talk a little bit about it. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think people who ask this question, or rather, people who say I want to sound like a native speaker, don't actually know what that means. A, in terms of like, what do you mean by a native speaker? And B, in terms of what does it take to become a native speaker? Um, Native speakers have a pretty substantial advantage over you just because they live their entire lives in the language and have for decades.
So that's a slight
Um,
advantage.
Slight advantage. And you're talking about not just the language at that point, you're talking very much about culture. And so it's effectively impossible to become a native speaker at that level unless you really dedicate the time and energy to it over the course of decades. Um, but you can
I've seen,
sound like a native speaker in the sense
yeah.
that like your accent can be very close to a native speaker. Your phrasing can be close to a native speaker. That's a much more achievable goal. And I think that's what a lot of people actually want. They don't actually want to be at that high level. Though I will say, I think Matt sort of pursued that actual native for a little while, so it's likely why he is so good at it.
It's
Um,
interesting. It's definitely an interesting question. I'm interested in like knowing if it's possible, basically.
mhm,
But I definitely see there being some very important different like phrasings here.
yeah,
Because right, there's the what the question down here says, do you need to sound like a native speaker? But then there's also, do you need to feel like a native speaker?
mhm,
Or do you need to, or do you want to be native level. There's
Yeah.
so many different like subtle phrasings that are vastly different things, right? Just sounding native is mostly a performance thing. You can do it with it is hard. Like you have to do practice and do really good, have good um, speaking, pronunciation. You probably need to practice phrasing, a bunch of different things, but you can sound basically identical to a native speaker with good dedication. Feeling like internally as good at your target language as your native language is so much like it's miles and miles past that.
Yeah.
Like it requires probably tens of thousands of language of hours in the language, especially living in the language, just doing mundane normal things. You have to know how to express basically everything that you come across, feelings, physical things, actions have a way that you would say them. You just have to experience so much of life because our lives are so innately tied to a language, which you can do. People have
Hmm.
done that. People have even like sort of completely forgotten their past languages, and really that is the language that they command the best. But it is a very different thing than like learning to do that. You have to like convert your life to that.
Yeah.
Um, from what I've seen.
So I would actually say, in response to the original question, not only should you not aim to
Oh,
sound
yeah.
like a native speaker, like not only do you not need to sound like a native speaker, um, most people should not aim to sound like native speakers,
Yeah.
because the amount of time that it takes to do that is so enormous that if that's your goal, you're talking about dedicating your life to it. And maybe you do want to dedicate your life to it, and like more power to you, but the vast majority of people do not want to dedicate their lives to that. It's not a good use of their time. So yes, you can aim for that, but I think most people, when they come in and say, I want to speak like a native speaker, I want to sound like a native speaker, that's my goal, that's my target, are biting off way more than they can chew. Oftentimes, it's their first attempt at learning a language, and so they really have no idea what it's going to take to get there. And it's like, prove to yourself that you can get to like functional fluency, and then decide whether you actually want to be a
Yeah.
native speaker or not. Once you've put in 1,000 hours, then you can decide whether you want to put in another 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 hours into a language.
Exactly. I wrote a little bit about this morning. Actually, somebody asked like why they sort of why are people fixated on this idea of native level? And I have a couple of hypotheses. Let's see what you think. The first one is that people from the outside of basically any hobby just don't understand the depth, right? If you're not a basketball player and you watch an NBA game and you see Steph Curry like just sinking threes, you're like, oh, he's really good. But if you like play basketball and have been following the NBA for a while, you know that he's not just good. There's like a different level of generational talent for being able to do something that is insane at like
Mm-hmm.
a super high level consistently among the best players in the world. Like, and so, but if you're on the outside, it just looks like he's pretty good, right? So that's like a reason number one. It's just you underestimate what a native is. The second reason just being it gets talked about a lot. Like a lot of people say they want to be native level, so you do too. And then the third one that I think is really real, especially like I felt it, was that if you only speak your native language, the only language you speak is at a native level. So you don't really want to go into a hobby aiming for like half the ability that you already have, right? If your first language is Spanish, you're not going to go, oh, I want to be way worse at Spanish than my native language. Because like that's just a weird way. Like you might understand that inside like your head and realize like, yeah, I'm never going to be better at Spanish than English, obviously, but it's hard to like say that because it's a strange thing to say, right? I want to be worse at this thing that I'm trying to get good at is just odd. So that's why I think that there's this sort of fixation on native level, native ability sort of thing. But I'd be curious to know what you think.
I think a lot of people just have a perfectionist mindset,
Yeah,
where it's like, it annoys me when I make mistakes, and I don't want to.
that's fair.
Um,
That's
and
fair.
and sometimes like, yes, I can let it go, when I'm like in the middle of a conversation. But like if I'm writing, especially if I'm like doing corrected writing where I have a tool telling me when I'm making mistakes, like it annoys me constantly that I am making mistakes. Um, and that is true in English as well. I have like a perfectionist mindset in English, and I have to like put it on hold a lot in many things in my life. Um, because at the end of the day, if you can get to a comfortable conversational level, that's probably enough for most people.
That's pretty
Um,
great. That's
it's
awesome.
great. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Like everyone in the world will be impressed. Um,
I would be impressed. And I learn languages for a living.
yeah. Like a comfortable level of fluency is very impressive.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of people, I've made this joke a few times where like, you've heard of Couch to 5K, the app.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I've made the joke that like people come into language learning saying like I want to be a native speaker, I want to sound like a native speaker. And I'm like, okay, that's like going from couch to gold at the Olympics, right? Like
Exactly.
it is a level of commitment that is so far beyond what the average person has ever done in their life.
Hmm.
I think it's a level of obsession required to get to that level. So that's my 2 cents on that. You don't need to be perfectionist about it. Choose an achievable goal, and if you don't feel like you need to be native speaker, then don't let the world pressure you into it.
Yeah, you do you. Language learning is an awesome hobby. I have a ton of fun with it, and I hope that you do too. Whatever your goals are, even if your goal is to be able to say hello in 50 languages, go for it.
Not my goal, but go for
No, I mean, me neither, but
it.
some people do like to be able to say hi to somebody in
Each
their
their
native
own.
language. Can be cool. Okay.
Though if that is
Um,
your goal, you probably shouldn't be using our methodology.
yeah, that would be very inefficient to learn
Yeah.
how to say hello. So, speaking of less is more, Eric, less is more, asks us a question about learning using your phone for intensive immersion. So, is there any way to do intensive immersion on my cell phone without it being too annoying and time consuming? Not really. Next question.
Yeah, I mean, you can. There are a couple apps for it, but it is definitely a much more difficult environment currently.
Hmm.
There's sort of two approaches that you can take to it. Um, one of which is if you're on Android, there's I think Kiwi browser is what it's called.
Yeah,
But
there's Orion browser on iOS and Kiwi on Android, but they're so finicky to use like
yeah,
real extensions on. I almost wouldn't recommend it unless you are really interested in finicky technical tools.
yeah. If you're
Right.
if you're very technical and you're very obsessive about like getting your tools correct, like using these essentially just a Chrome browser on your device that you can just install normal extensions into. Um, it can work. Some people have got it to work. Like many people have gotten it to work, but it is extremely finicky, as Ben said. You really have to play with it to get it to work properly. So that's one approach. The other approach is to use a an existing app that can either consume content and then wrap it in a meta layer, or that has content within it.
Mhm.
The two that I am aware of that are most popular would be Link and LingoPie. Link, you
Yeah.
can import content into, and then it gives you all the tools. LingoPie provides you with streaming content and then puts the tools on top of that. So both of them are paid, but they do provide the tools that you need for intensive immersion on mobile. So if that is your go-to, if you're normally on mobile, if that's where you want to be, then it's worth ponying up the $10 a month or whatever it is to have those tools available to you.
I think Link is more expensive than that, but I think that's about what LingoPie is. I'm not actually
Uh,
positive.
I think Link is more expensive if you do it month to month. I think it's 15 if you do it month to month, but then it drops down to like nine
Oh,
if you
sure.
do like 3 months or 6 months at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Ethan sums it up pretty well, but it's really difficult if you're trying to go the free route. And I would probably just recommend finding some kind of workaround, either using like just reading and using an external dictionary, or finding another way to do your intensive immersion that isn't like officially intensive immersion, adding in some kind of other aspect or whatever, just because it is really hard to get the actual true intensive tools to work well. But check out Link or Linkopie if you're interested. They are doing interesting things, and they do function on mobile because they are primarily mobile apps.
Hmm.
Cool. Thank you for the question. Let's move on here. This is a question from, I have to scroll all the way over to find their name. This question comes from Nikolai. Nikolai asks, I need to practice speaking early. Can I still use Refold? To make it short, I am going somewhere where there are a lot of people speaking in my target language, and I want to be able to talk with them. Less
Sure.
than 6 months into the journey, how can I practice my speaking but still hold with sort of Refold values and the processes and things, and they're learning Russian if it makes any difference?
Yeah. So we actually don't reject early speaking. We just don't think it's particularly efficient in
Yeah,
terms
that's the
of the
primary thing.
process. So, early speaking, it's not that it's a sin per se. I know there are some people in the community that like shun it and they're like, no, you're not allowed to do it. It's like, no, you're definitely allowed to do it and you should do it if you want to, especially if you have an opportunity to like go and speak the language.
Mhm.
In the situation that you're describing, you 100% should be practicing speaking so that
Yeah.
you can actually go and do that. So it's not so much that we say you can't, it's just if you're going to do it, we want to make sure that you are also doing a good amount of input as well to
Yeah,
have that as
that's the key.
yeah, you need to have this counterbalance to your output. Um, Otherwise, if you just focused on output with no input, which a lot of learners do, uh, you're going to hit a ceiling very quickly.
Mhm.
Um, Now I know that internally we just wrote or Clayton just wrote a very detailed guide on how to integrate output into the methodology if you need it, and we released
From
that to
day
our
one.
yeah from day one we released that to our course customers.
Mhm.
But do you want to give a quick summary of what's in that?
Yeah, so the guide goes over first, like, why do we call it speaking early? What are you potentially risking, that sort of thing? And there's a couple of like tips and tricks about like, okay, you're going to have miscommunications. You might have some psychic damage from not being very good yet, but if you can be okay with that, that's totally fine. Then we go over like some basics of language hacking and then getting into some things like memorizing phrases from a good phrase book. Those are still made today and they're still quite nice. You can memorize some good phrases that are actually very useful. We recommend using Anki for that kind of thing. You can also hack some grammar patterns or hack some grammar by learning the set patterns. So if sort of like Mad Libs is the example we give. Like if you memorize the phrase like after X, I will do X. Like those sorts of phrases, you can just kind of Mad Lib in anything you need and make an understandable phrase. So things like that are really useful. Then we have a whole section in here about like you still have to learn vocabulary and immerse. So like do that. You still need to understand the language or else this is all pointless. Then there's a bit in there about pronunciation and accent, right? Trying to learn some of especially the most important parts of the pronunciation for the language, because if you've ever had a conversation with somebody who has a very strong accent in English, even if you're trying to understand them, sometimes you just won't understand what word they're trying to say, no matter how hard you try. Um, I taught English for a while, and I could not figure out why my student was trying to buy rugs or rocks for so long. We had a whole conversation. He's like, rocks, and eventually he was trying to say rugs, and I just didn't get it. I was like, why are you buying rocks for your living room? Like, I
Yeah.
was so confused. And like, I was really trying to meet him at his level. Like, I was really trying to not do that.
No,
So,
I have this problem all the time where I will be talking to somebody whose second language is English, and it will take me a good 5 minutes or so to get used to their accent so that I can really
mhm.
start to understand them at the level that they want to be understood. Um, and it requires like rewiring my expectation of their phonology.
Yes.
And that's just a huge amount of mental effort that you have to go
Mhm.
through. So anything that you can do to reduce that mental load on your uh,
Speaking
speaking
partner,
partner. I was about to say interlocutor.
wrong
um,
language.
right. I mean, it also that word is also an English word. Um,
Really?
Yeah.
Interlocator.
Yeah, yeah, anyways. But anything that you can do to reduce the burden on the other person talking to you to try and understand you is a win. It'll just help the conversation flow.
Yeah.
So having like doing some accent practice to make sure that you're actually like not butchering every single sound in the language is
Mhm.
pretty important.
Again, you don't have to sound
Yeah.
like a native speaker, but clearing up the harder ones or the like especially vowel sounds. If the language functions a lot on vowel sounds, if your vowel sounds are bad, it's super hard to understand because that's often what we pick up on.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. So,
Um, so yeah, so there's a bunch of different pieces to consider, but generally what you're aiming for is you still want to be able to understand the other person. So
absolutely.
input is key, and you want to make sure that they're not working too hard in trying to understand you.
Hmm.
And then so accent pronunciation is important, and then the third is for figuring out like actually what to say. You want to keep it simple. You don't
Hmm.
try to be like super high level fluent. Just keep it simple. Prepackaged phrases or pre um, structured phrases are like
Yep.
they're going to be your best friends. And then rehearsing, like practicing the same conversations over and over again, is a very easy way to uh, ingrain at least the basic patterns. If you're going to like a conference, you're going to have the same conversation 10 times, 100 times, whatever it is. So being able to just like off the cuff say that thing will enable you to get into deeper stuff later. And you probably will struggle when you get into the deeper things, but that's kind of normal. Um, so yeah, those are sort of the things that we would prioritize
Mhm.
if you really need to speak as quickly as possible.
I want to make a video on something I call the, in my mind, I call it the italki sprint, but I can probably come up with a non-branded name. But it's where you basically schedule a bunch of lessons, either days in a row, hours in a row, like really in a short time frame, and you do the same thing every single time. Just like a hello, my name is, this is what I do, da 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 conversation, like
Mhm.
10 times in 5 days, just to really get those reps in and get really good at that one thing that you're going to use a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also kind of fun if you do it like maybe 5 times. It can be pretty enjoyable because by the fifth time you're pretty good at it, and you're like, "Damn, I'm so good at this."
By the sixth time, you're bored.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I've explained
Um,
my like Spanish learning journey for I don't know 100 times at this point.
oh God. All right. Well, let's hop down. We have another question here from another Russian-ish one from Candace or Candice. There's an accent on it though, and they say. As a beginner in Russian, how does one get used to a different alphabet after a lifetime of using Latin letters, especially like the cursive letters? How do you change your brain to read the letters of another language, especially when they look exactly the same but with a different behavior? How do you learn to read and write in Russian?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different components to this. And we actually ran into this problem with when we were developing our course where we had this mental model of like, well, we think this is how it should work. So let's go find products that already exist or websites that already teach this way. And we honestly couldn't. And that was kind of disappointing to find that.
Yeah, so to clarify, we think that you should learn writing systems based on like the way that it's spoken and how that is written rather than the other way around, which is what most stuff does.
Yeah.
And so we went looking for things that taught like sound first, basically, instead of like, here's the letter A. It makes the sound ah, a, o, ow. Oh, wait, that's a lot. Hang on. What? Instead of going that way, we sort of flipped it. Like, here's this sound, and then here's all the ways that sound is written.
Yeah. So our perspective is if you focus in on the sounds first and then map it to the way it is written, it is easier than trying to go the other way around. Because the way something is written can be very inconsistent. But the sound is, once you define the sound and you represent it as an IPA symbol or whatever symbol you want,
Or
it
the
it
sound.
yeah,
You can
and
hear
then
it.
you you can hear the sound and then you see examples of that sound and all of its different spellings, it helps to make the connection between, oh, okay, it's not my fault that, I'm struggling to read this word and understand what it sounds like. It is the fact that the languages are inherently chaotic and difficult to put any sort of logic around.
And the thing that's important here, I think, is that we don't read letters when we're reading. We read full words or even full phrases sometimes.
Yep.
Like you can do those speed reading things where the words don't move; they just get flashed in front of you, and you can read a long English word it's so fast because you know what it looks like. You're not reading the letters; you just know that is that word, that is how it's said. Like I'm not a good speller. Like this person also has, actually no, they just use British spelling. Never mind. But like there's spelling rules that are weird and hard to do in basically every language, even if they're phonetic. There's usually something that is just a bit weird, but natives don't even really think about it when reading because you're just so used to the language and how it's said and everything that it's easy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to get with this, like sounds first, words first, rather than letters first.
Yeah. So, as an example, sometimes I'll read aloud, right? And I will be reading at like an actual very fast pace. And then I'll see a word that I've never seen before or that I've never said before. And I will just like, my brain just hits the brakes. And basically, yeah. So like, I'm reading fine, 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 fine. And then I see the word and I'm like, stop. I have no idea. Like, there's just a blank spot in terms of my brain's ability to process that word because either I don't know it or because I've never pronounced it before. And so what Ben is saying about starting with sounds and words is that when you're looking at a word that you know and it doesn't really matter how it's spelled because you're not trying to spell it out, you're not trying to sound it out, you are looking at the word and you already know what word it is just based on your knowledge of it and what it says there. All of this comes with time, so inherently you can also practice the reading and the letters one by one. It's kind of painful at first, but it does work over time. If you do the sound study and you do the word study, you will eventually just start to be able to see and recognize words automatically. You will start to be able to see and recognize letters automatically. You will start to be able to read aloud. All these things happen in time, but it is not abnormal that you are struggling to get used to a new writing system. It is probably the most normal part of language learning.
It's the first thing, right? I want to
Yeah,
add something to that list of things that you will be able to do
sure.
is you'll be able to do it with missing information.
Oh, sure.
Czech uses lots of little lines and things on top of the letters, but many speakers don't write with that if they have their keyboard doesn't have that. They're in like a video game that doesn't have the support for those letters because they're kind of rare in the world. Um, I can read those words just fine. I don't even notice that those things are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only been immersing for less than 1,100 hours at this point. With Spanish, I can just fluently read without accents, and the accents are correct in my head. Like you get to a certain point where you know what is being said. It's easy.
And we do the same
And
thing in English, right? Because
yeah,
English is
totally.
so inconsistent with their spelling and the sounds that are produced from the spelling that like the only reason you know how a word is pronounced is because you've heard it so many times.
You know the word, yeah.
Yeah, you know the words, so you know how it's pronounced. And this happen you'll see this often where someone will pronounce a word in a way that is non-standard or I don't want to say incorrect, but it's non-standard. And it's because they learned it from a book without ever hearing it before.
Yep.
But going
I, I
vice versa,
I
like
was like,
you'll never mess that
what's a hyperbole? Or no, I said it's no, I used it. I used like the hyperbole thing. It's like, you mean hyperbole? It's like, why is it said like that? That's not my fault.
Yeah. There's another one that's epoch. So it's like
Oh
epic,
yeah.
epoch, 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 epoch.
Clayton says here, imagine reading red as read instead of red.
Yeah.
And the joke is that read and red are spelled the same.
Hmm.
Like, yeah. It's
So you're already used to this in your native language. You've already done this before. You just have to go through that same process again. And what Ben is describing is this contextual inference, and what's really is like automatic contextual inference. So
mhm.
you know the situation, you know the spelling, and your brain will just automatically know the right pronunciation of that word. And this is especially true in languages that don't write their vowels at all, like
Oh
Hebrew and
yeah.
Arabic, which are a whole other level of difficulty because now you're looking at it and you have to infer what the correct word is in that context when you don't have half the information.
I'm still looking forward to your Hebrew arc.
I know, I'm very excited for it.
Although to end with some like concrete advice for this person, because I feel like we've gone off into the weeds. Start with sounds. We actually have a Russian phonetic writing system deck that we have on our Anki web account. We have some free decks. You can actually just search learn to read Russian on ankiweb.net/shared/decks. We have the sounds first, we have sentences, but then the next thing is to do reading and listening at the same time. So either audiobooks or subtitles, like matching subtitles, and really start to train your brain to see those things and go, yep, that's normal. I get that. Also do some vocab study with audio and text, right? Do lots of audio and text together to really just give yourself a lot of exposure to them, and uh, and then do a lot of that, and it will get a lot easier. You don't have to necessarily rep every single letter in the Cyrillic system to get good at it, but that is also a helpful step just to, if you, especially if you want to write it. Although I will also add in that Cyrillic cursive is its own beast. It is not easy just to go to, just like German uh, cursive. Forgot that word. English cursive can also get pretty crazy. If you want to know
Dude,
cursive
Hebrew
letters,
cursive is also completely different than
oh,
Hebrew block
I've
letters.
never even seen that. Yeah, like if you want to get good at the cursive side, that is a thing you're going to have to learn. But I bet there's a lot of videos of like Russian babichkas doing, like showing you how to write in cursive. Then you can learn some stuff from that, which would be pretty interesting, actually. Learning cursive in a foreign language. Never thought of that. But
Yeah.
anyways, I hope that is helpful to you, Candase, Candace, if you're Spanish. But yeah, thank you for the question. All right, I want to actually not do another question, and
Oh,
I want to go off on the rails, go off the rails a little bit.
go
I,
off on the rails.
you know what? I'm looking for something also while speaking. So hush. I tasked the lovely Bree to make us a language memes slideshow. You laugh, you lose.
Oh no.
So we're going to do a you laugh, you lose language memes edition.
But you've already
I'm
seen
going to,
them, so
I have not seen anything.
you
I
haven't
am
seen them. Okay, all
completely
right,
in
all
the,
right.
yep, that's why I had Bree do it.
All right, I
And
gotta
this
be
is the
super
thing
serial.
that Clayton spoiled today. Um, Almost.
I actually forgot about it, so
Oh, good. Um, oh, good. All right. You laugh, you lose.
I'm so
Language memes
used to
edition.
smiling on this, like it's gonna be very hard for me not to.
You can smile, but there's no audible laughs. I don't want to hear a single.
So put
You
myself
can,
on
you
mute.
can. Okay, that's cheating. You are allowed to breathe out of your nose. That's okay. That's not a laugh. Okay, that top thing is getting cut off. Let me change the background because that is ugly. That is weird. That's better. That's also better.
That looks
Why
fine
is everything purple? Oh, that one's better. I
because
like
that's
this.
our brand color.
This is a copy of a. Do you know what this slideshow is from?
Yeah, I do.
That's funny. Um, okay. This is my high
But what
tech.
if I want to laugh?
Then you can lose a point. You're gonna get docked a point. I'm gonna give you
All
a
right.
tally here. All right. I don't know if I'm gonna read these aloud or not. We're gonna just go with the flow. But first meme. People's reaction is when you start speaking their language. You just said one word in my language, and now we're officially BFFs. It's all the red countries down here at the bottom: Spanish, Italian, lovely. Congrats, but I don't know why you put yourself through this. All of the like Slavic and weird languages out there. That's the definitely it doesn't count. That's definitely a Czech reaction.
Mm-hmm.
That's cute, but you know, let's just speak it English.
Yeah.
Any Germans?
That's real.
Dutch, yeah, it's kind of too bad. And then just the, please don't.
What's the purple?
What's purple?
Like in
Oh, I don't know. Secret languages.
Darn it.
I think it's it's actually a lake. I don't know.
It's just water.
Sorry for bad English. Sorry for my poor language. Pardon me for my choice of words. If I make a mistake in English, please don't correct me. I have no respect for this language. Heart emoji.
Fair. English is terrible.
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah. Oh no.
Oh god.
Okay. So this joke is mostly for the internal team because this looks a lot like Clayton for some reason. He's got the same Clayton
It does
vibe.
look like Clayton.
That was a laugh.
It does look like Clayton.
It does look like Clayton. It does look like Clayton. So most people know him as the Refold community manager, language coach, podcast host on our team. And he's apparently a doctor on a Norwegian TV show. I don't know. All right. I'll have to.
Clayton, are we allowed to share your background? Post in chat if yes.
This is a blog post. Oh, his actual background?
His like actual career background.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's shared it publicly.
He said this one sent me. This meme. Absolutely. I think he said it's okay. Yeah, he said sure.
All right. So Clayton actually has somewhat of a medical background, but not on the type of patients that you would expect.
They are not still alive.
No, Clayton was a forensic technician. So he used to analyze dead people and why they died. So he has seen many more dead bodies than you would expect.
Which is a fun background fact.
It's a fun background, but he's basically a doctor. He's just, not trying to keep people alive.
He doesn't need a certification because it doesn't matter if he messes up.
There's no malpractice in dead people.
We've had Lamont and Mr. Salas in the chat today. And Mr. Salas said that it's just Danish.
It's just Danish?
Oh, no, the lakes are big ones. Because he's a big old nerd in the Scandinavia place.
Got it.
And so, yeah, thank you for the background. And also, hello. All right, next language meme. Are you prepared?
I'm so prepared.
Oh God, this is very much us. Polyglots in 350 BCE. Books not invented. No flashcards. Walking 300 kilometers to find a native speaker. 424 languages. And us. I have too many Anki card, dude. There are only 4 Netflix series.
I look back at some of the historical polyglots, and it is amazing what they were able to accomplish with almost no resources.
When you have a lot of free time.
That's true. We didn't have as many time-wasting activities at the time.
If you give them TikTok, they're a lot less effective.
Maybe we should just go back to the Dark Ages. Just like give us all of the good resources and none of the bad ones.
What would 350 BCE TikTok look like? What are people posting at that time?
Nothing good.
It's all just heresy. Okay. Next one. Oh yeah, this is very true. Yeah. Okay. That's just not even. It's sort of funny, but it's also a little bit sad, right? When you just don't quite, it doesn't quite work. You say something and they go, what? And you're like, oh God, I just,
To be fair, this happens in English too. Like I use Gen Z words occasionally, and I do not use them properly.
somebody commented on a YouTube video, just a nonsensical string of things that I suppose were English, but I did not understand.
Have you seen
Apparently,
the Gen Z courtroom?
no.
All right, I'm gonna look it up and send it to you after this.
Oh God. Okay.
It's very funny. It's like a whole legal court case entirely in Gen Z slang.
Oh, a little sketch by a guy playing both
I think
sides?
so.
Maybe, but I'll watch it
No,
again.
no, there's like a whole courtroom of a bunch of different people.
Oh, a whole production.
Hmm.
Good for
They're even
them.
wearing suits in a real courtroom. It appears.
What? Let's go. Gen Z
It's
moving
very
up the
funny.
world.
I did not understand any of it.
Yeah. No, it needs subtitles. I need subtitles for Gen Z slang.
Yeah,
But
they're-
apparently, to mog is a word now. I'm not online enough to know that word.
yeah.
All right. Next meme. You prepared?
I'm so prepared.
Yeah. Again, this is just a little bit
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did laugh, so you should mark that one down.
I did mark you down. We're
Okay.
2-1 right now.
I
Such a
recently
tight race.
I was feeling like super burnt out on Sunday, and so I watched Billions, um, the TV show, and it's like it's so hard to put down. It's so good.
I've never even heard of that show.
No,
Like that's the depth of English where somebody can say this show is amazing, one of the best shows ever made, and I'm like, never heard of it.
I wish I could find it in Spanish, but I honestly don't think I'd understand it because there are some scenes where I don't understand the English because they're making all sorts of references that I don't.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite shows of all time, Psych, is just chock full of 80s references to random movies.
Hmm.
And like in the show, they acknowledge like, who's seen this movie? Nobody's seen this movie. It's you and me. Like, but I get that it's a joke and I like the vibe. I like the energy.
There you go.
I also enjoyed
Yeah.
like stuff from the 90s, movies, TV shows, whatever. But I do not get the references.
Yeah, yeah. There was this whole like Godfather reference where I'm like, I've seen The Godfather, but I have no idea what you're referring to.
Yeah, I only ever watched the first one like 5 years ago. I don't remember it, honestly.
Yeah.
It is talked about a lot though. I've been going
Yeah.
back to older like black and white movies from all over the world, and there's a lot of really good ones out there too. Just good cinema.
Like what?
I watched Harakiri the other day, which is a
Okay.
Japanese movie from like the 60s.
Okay.
Really good. Just great storytelling, good
Great.
cinematography, cinematography. Yeah. We have. Okay. Okay, and now we have. Lamont is also using some slang. I don't rate the
Is it
first
Australian
one.
slang?
I don't know if it's a because he says Godfather 2 is where it's at. I don't rate the first one.
Okay. I
Okay,
haven't heard that before, but I kind of understand it.
I kind of do too. Um,
It's not even worth rating. I don't even give it 1 star.
yeah, that's what I understand it as too.
Yeah.
He also says that my 13-year-old told me that there was an Aussie politician who defended the social media ban, but in Gen Z speak.
Oh,
He's got to connect with them youth,
the mutes.
them youths. Them gonna change the world if they ever can buy a house. And that's yeah. Oh no!
One day.
Apparently, I don't rate is also just Australian.
Oh, it's
So
just
we're-
Australian. Okay.
Okay, next meme. Oh, this is a little sad.
This
Who
one's
made
just
this?
sad.
This was just a
I've
little
seen this
sad.
on Reddit.
Come
I've
on,
absolutely
guys.
seen this one.
Oh, this looks like it's from Language O'Clock.
In fact, I think this one actually predates Refold. So obviously he's wearing a Refold shirt, but I remember this back in the MIA days of like the exact same meme.
Oh, I mean, this is definitely like I do this, but I don't go outside. So I'm just like, oh, I'm so good. I'm here.
Ben, that's worse. It's
Is
worse.
is it? Is going out somewhere to a party and immersing in the corner worse than staying at home and immersing?
Uh, actually, yeah, no, you're right. This is worse.
Ha! I win. But yeah, this was Isabella. Okay. Okay. These are pretty good so far. Bree
All
was
right.
underselling it a bit. I think they're solid. Yeah. I'm gonna fight Anki. Nope. Damn, Anki got
I'm just
hands.
committed to losing this because I want to laugh at these.
They are good. They're good. Although my Anki, actually no, my Anki's been terrible recently because I added in close cards for check declensions. Oh my
Fun.
god.
Yeah.
The plural for rose is not just roses, it's also rose, but it has a different declension pattern.
Hmm.
And so it's like the petals of the roses and the petals of the rose are completely different, but just rose is the same. And so I just get it's so annoying. I've
That's
been getting
frustrating.
very frustrated at my Anki in the morning recently.
My Anki has, I've completely bastardized Anki to do something that it's not really meant for. I'm using it
So
as
you're successfully fighting Anki?
yeah.
Winning?
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm using it as like I took our Spanish 1K deck and I went through and categorized everything as like that is automatic versus that is not automatic, and now I have the non-automatic ones as like my production cards. But it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna produce a sentence with this. It's like, no, I'm gonna write a paragraph about this. And I've been trying to do like these like mini essays where every word is the prompt for a new paragraph and I have to connect it to the previous paragraph.
That
And
sounds
so
like a
I've
fun game.
it's actually quite fun. I've been
We
enjoying
should,
it.
we should play an improv game that's just that.
Yeah, we could.
That'd be fun. I'd do some improv on to practice Spanish.
Hmm.
Wouldn't be very good stream content, I don't think, but
Probably not.
unless we can get Zendy in here live doing subtitles in English. I feel like that'd be really hard. Okay.
I don't know. We probably speak slow enough when we're trying to improv game in Spanish.
Dumb enough. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
All right. Next low quality 1 MB image meme. Google Translation be like, cover me. I like that one.
That's on brand. That's
It looks so cozy.
that's true. That is exactly what what Google Translate does.
Have you come across a very non-literal phrase recently?
Non-literal phrase. Not this week. This week I've been awful in Spanish. This whole week has been messed up for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
In Czech, when something is really annoying you and like you're just fed up with it, you have it full teeth.
Full teeth.
Full teeth.
Yeah.
Entire
I
all
can see
the
that.
full teeth. Oh, that's so relevant. Let's go. Which beer would you like? Like. It's an interesting accent he has. Which beer would you like? Like. Like, there it is. That's one. It's Ike. Like.
It's like half
I have an
British.
IPA.
You love IPA.
I do. That's my Oregon blood.
What's your favorite language?
It's not a language. I do like the IPA as well as an IPA. I will admit this is a very relevant meme to me specifically. I jinxed myself.
IPA likes you too.
Apparently, it's all over me. All right. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
This is good. Check. French is insane with the silent letters.
Yep.
Um,
There's a joke that
I have no comment here.
The joke I always used to hear was uh, I'm blanking on it. Hold on.
Terrible joke teller.
I know. Sorry. As soon as I said it, I was like, I'm gonna tell a joke. Nope, gone. All right, I'll have to think about it.
A fellow human asks, "How would you do a English spelling reform?" Speaking of silent letters. Um,
If you've ever read the Ender's Game series, specifically the Shadow series, they converted it into Common, which is, and there's a whole conversation about how they simplified English into a common language that could be learned more easily by non-English natives or by other countries.
what is the version of that in 1984? Ingsoc or
Mm,
something?
I haven't read 1984 since high school.
Clayton's gonna know this, but there's a like the version of English that has that doesn't let you think as much, basically. Um, which is what makes me think of. But honestly, fellow human, I wouldn't do an English spelling reform. Just learn it as if they're Chinese characters. And you're good. Oh, it's
I would
new.
do a English spelling reform. I would 100% do it.
Would you want to learn that?
I don't think it would be very hard to learn. I feel like it would be Esperanto.
Just
If
a
you just like,
spelling reform. The spoken language stays the same, and you have to incorporate all the different dialects across the entire world.
that might be
Or we can
challenging.
just make the Australians learn something way harder.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, me too. Sorry, Lamont. Yes, and Clayton did know the answer to that thing. I was right. Okay. Newspeak.
Newspeak.
I was right about him knowing it. I was wrong about what it was called.
Got it. The joke that I remember is the only vowels you pronounce in French words are the ones that aren't in the word.
Yeah, right. See all these here? Don't say those. Say these. Which ones? Exactly. Those. Fuck. What? Okay. Why would a fly land on something like this? Rats should be ashamed for falling for this trap. Bears? This is ridiculous. 15-minute Chinese. Yeah. I mean, just like bears, people want fast solutions. They want quick, easy things that you can do on the toilet.
No comment.
I love this one.
Too real.
So cute. Look at
I've
the
never seen
topper.
the. I've never seen the.
Yeah, I've never seen this.
In this form.
His final form.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you get like that? Every time I add a card to Anki, I do one push-up. Jesus Christ.
I don't think
Maybe
we
that's
need
what
to
you should do.
I should just do one push-up every time I add a card to Anki. I'd never do any push-ups.
Oh. Good point.
Or I'd do like 800 in one day.
Yeah. You either
Those are
kill
my two
yourself or
options.
do no work.
I feel like it would be more valuable if I like every time I reviewed a card in Anki, I did one push-up.
Ooh, that'd be good. Or
Yeah,
every time you
it's like,
don't know a word.
or it's like every however many number of reviews, that's how many push-ups I have to do.
I mean, that could get pretty high. My
Yeah.
reviews right now are in the 60s or something.
I'll keep them low. You're not going to want to do that many push-ups.
I do enough of my push-ups in the CrossFit class.
There you go.
Okay. But yeah, there are some people like this who just add 20,000 cards to Anki. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of a lot.
Don't worry, as long as they're sentence cards, it's fine.
We talked about this earlier.
Is that George Lopez?
I don't know.
What show is that? I do not know this meme format.
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
It does look like George Lopez looking side by side. Let's do
Huh.
George Lopez meme. This one doesn't come up. So somebody dug deep in the barrel, or this is not George Lopez.
Okay. Oh, here we go.
Anyways, that is not relevant to continuing.
Nope.
Somebody says that is Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Oh.
Really? Huh. The more you
That is
know.
a movie I never saw.
Oh.
Oh no.
Is that really how
Oh,
Korean conjugates stuff?
it's a
That's
agglutinative, right?
terrifying. I don't know. I haven't learned Korean,
I
but I
just
could.
it's similar to Japanese in terms they just like stack things on the end.
I haven't learned Japanese.
All right, fair enough.
It says active, cumulative, and passive. So yeah, it looks like they're verbs.
Uh,
Jeez, babe, are you
that's
okay? You barely touched your conjugation chart. Good lord.
what's the right side? I can't really see.
Neither can I.
Okay. For you, you'll have to send us the high def version. I'm curious.
I don't want to know. You're right. It is agglutinative. Guess who told us that?
Clayton.
Yeah. It is a highly suffixing language. Root, affix, affix, affix. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Thank you for our dose of language knowledge, Clayton. Do you have any other fun
Yeah.
facts to share?
I mean, it's like kind of like German where they just like stack a bunch of shit together to make new words.
Oh, sure. But isn't it like if you just put stuff together as all languages? Some just have spaces in them.
Yeah. But I feel like so like with Spanish, they just have a conjugation for a specific situation, like mood, tense, and I call it perspective, but you had a different word for it. Person. Whereas I feel like with agglutinative language, they just stack them.
Just like put more stuff on there.
Yeah.
You have your hot dog with sauerkraut, mustard, sauce, ketchup, relish, so many different things on top instead of just like a different food for each day.
Mm-hmm. Which might actually be a nicer situation. I'm not sure.
Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but languages will sort of over time go between more analytical and like they'll sort of go back and forth between changing a lot more and not changing a lot more over thousands of years.
Okay.
So you slowly lose these like more complicated changes, but then just add more stuff, then stop adding stuff and go back to more complicated changes. And I think that kind of logically makes sense as people like as things get simpler, right? It sort of just moves to the other side of the scale since there's not really enough. It's sort of just a different kind of simple, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was listening to language transfer, and he was talking about like, yeah, they changed this, 400 years ago because it was simpler.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, it just sounded better.
Yeah. Really quick digression. Hi, Fisho. I'd probably go with Yomitan since there's a lot of updates and stuff, but I always used vocab sieve for Spanish. But Yomitan is doing a lot of good, cool stuff with the in the space right now. Okay, next meme.
Also, big shout out to all the people who build tools in the space. There's
Oh yeah, the
like,
tools are cool.
and it's really awesome seeing this like Cambrian explosion the past 5 years of all of the crazy new Chrome extensions. Like the concept of a meta layer on top of content has just exploded. There are now like dozens and dozens and dozens of those Chrome extensions on available for anybody to use.
And I think it's pretty impressive that some of the most full-featured, awesomest tools are free.
Yep.
Their UX might not be super polished, but like I have no reason to stop using ASP player, for example. It's just so good.
Yeah.
I don't even
Well
know
known
if
to the
it
ASP
really
player,
does
though.
the same thing. Yeah. ASP player. I personally love Loot. Yomi Tan has been doing some awesome stuff. Anki, right? Kimchi Reader, absolutely.
I just wish
All,
Anki wouldn't keep breaking things. It's like not backwards compatible. Their semantic versioning does not work.
you're just salty.
Well, no, I'm salty because like semantic versioning is supposed to tell you when something breaks so that you can avoid upgrading, and it doesn't. Like they break things all the time
Oh,
under minor or
boo.
either patch numbers or minor numbers. That's what bothers me more than it being like open source and breaking often. It's that they don't number their versions correctly,
Mhm.
so I don't know when things break.
That's fair. Yeah, that is annoying. Um, just never upgrade. That's what we did for a while. Then it started
We
causing
did that for
problems
like a
with
year.
users. Yeah. It's like, hey, Refold, your Anki tutorial is like 5 years out of date.
Yeah, it is.
We're like,
It's
how is that possible? We started
They're like,
2 years
what's
ago.
FSRS? I'm like, or like, do you recommend FSRS? I'm like, I don't know what that is because I haven't upgraded Anki in 5 years.
Yes, we do. Um, cool. Um, okay, next meme. We've been
All
sitting
right,
here
next
for
name.
too long. What's up, dog? Was Doug gonna come? Doug loves brunch. Nuh-uh. Doug's stuck because of a tunnel obstruction, and a truck dumped a ton of onions. Ugh. What? The schwa is the most common vowel sound in English. In fact, if you stick it into the right conversation topics, you can avoid learning other ones.
Oh
Oh, the joke is
no.
that it's
Oh no.
what's up was Doug gonna come. Doug loves brunch. Nuh-uh. Doug's stuck because of a tunnel obstruction. A truck dumped a ton of onions. Ugh.
Uh,
What's this comic called?
this
It's a
is
bunch of letters.
XKCD.
There is literally one of these for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hello. Hello, sweetie. Want to come up? Come here. So with their way.
Ben, give us new meme.
Okay, sorry. New meme.
Yeah.
Don't stalk your Polish neighbors. Leave them alone.
Just be friends with them.
Just
Go
be
say
friends
hi.
with them.
Bring them a
Crosstalk.
pie.
Come on. Do you want the blanket? I think he wants the blanket. Okay, next meme.
All right.
Oh, this is a good one. This is so real.
Too close to home.
Yeah, I feel like I do that a lot. I help people.
I
with-
don't anymore, but
I kind of enjoy it. I do enjoy some of the tool stuff.
dude, when I first got into MIA, I was trying to like get passive listening, like condensed audio working, and the only thing to download Netflix was on Windows. And so I had to like set up a cloud machine on AWS to run
Windows instance.
run like the Flix grab to download Netflix, but it didn't work in my country like to get the audio that I wanted, and so um, I needed to VPN in the
Jesus.
private machine, but I had to like separate it so it was only VPNing like incoming traffic and not my like connection to it because it kept like breaking the connection every time I turned on the VPN. I must have spent like a week trying to get this to work, and it did. And then once I had it, I still had to like either run Morphman or I had to like I found Subadub on Mac, and like what an absolute I would not say waste of time, but I definitely spent a lot of time.
That sounds like such a waste of time to me.
But like I was suddenly able to
press
have
the play button and go to a different tab.
well, so it was partially passive listening, and then it was also I wanted to automatically produce Anki cards for it. So I like took the entire Avatar series and converted them into Aki cards but it took me like a week to do it.
That sounds like such a nightmare. The series doesn't even have mashing subs.
I know.
Young Ethan was crazy. What a wild guy. Anyways.
Oh no, duo.
Yeah. I do have many conversations like this where they're like, "Oh, I've been learning this on Duolingo." I'm like, "Just don't talk to me. I don't want to talk about it."
I
I'm
talked to
sorry I
somebody.
mentioned that I work in languages.
I was talking to somebody, and he was like, "Oh, I like have been learning this language. I've been using Duolingo." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And like, I'm glad that you're like learning it. He's like, "Yeah, I have like a 350-day streak." And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh. Oh.
oh, okay."
We're gonna get an Ethan Streak Crusade thing arc at some point.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we should go Duolingo's route and just like people can pay us to fix their streaks retroactively.
Or they can just pay us an amount and we just give them a streak of that amount.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
You have
$1 per day of streak. You want 1,000-day streak? Boom, pay us $1,000.
Just genius.
I'm surprised Duolingo hasn't gone for that yet.
The best marketing. I mean, that would work. That would
100%.
so work with Duolingo. Oh my god, they would make so much money.
It's such a status symbol. Like
Yeah.
people could just buy their own status symbol.
Although it would completely erode that like status symbolness in like
Probably.
7 days.
Hmm.
But they'd make a lot of money, I think.
I mean, it was like when Twitter started charging for the blue check mark, and then suddenly everybody had a blue check mark.
And then they were just impersonating people.
Yes, absolutely.
But I feel like it'd be way less funny with Duolingo and people are like, look, I have a 10,000 day streak. Like, that's literally not possible. Probably. When was Duolingo?
I have a 100,000-day streak.
That's not possible, I think. Okay. I like how this isn't even like an edited meme. It just has a text at the top.
Complete side tangent. So on Instagram, I get all of the language ads for like every single language company out there.
I know,
get all
because
of the
you
ads.
ping me on Basecamp every time you see one.
I know, I do. But there have been so many shots at Duolingo. They just take like random Duolingo sentences and like integrate them into their ad. So like I've seen Umi on there. I've seen Jumpspeak. I don't know. I can't remember all of them, but like Duolingo is absolutely the meme capital of Instagram ads now.
I do not doubt it. They have a big green target on their owly face.
Mm-hmm.
And their sentences are wild.
They're so crazy. The robot ate my cheese.
Oh no, my cheese.
Not the
Why did you take
cheese.
not the cheese? Not the cheese, sir. Okay. I like this one. This one's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I do like
Rip
a good
Hedwig.
Doge meme. Rip Hedwig. Although okay, I don't want to go on my Harry Potter tangents, but now I've listened to it so many times in so many languages, it is so annoying.
Why is it annoying
It
you?
is- Oh God. It's just the nonsensical nature of everything. Like I get that it was made for kids, but like there are better, more logical kid stories out there that don't have weird random plot holes like Mr. Weasley not being able to read numbers. He
Mhm.
cannot read numbers. Okay. That's all I'm going to go into.
Well, they don't teach math until like sixth year.
They don't teach math. They teach numerology or whatever it's called.
Yeah, arithmancy. I think it was called.
There's
I don't know.
arithmancy, numerology. I think it's like one course. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's so
You,
frustrating.
you know what annoys me? They don't teach first aid.
Yeah.
You know what else annoys me? I didn't learn first aid either.
Yeah. I got taught from my dad, so.
I did not get taught in school any first aid.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
don't know anything about first aid. I am 35 years old.
Also, a question. If you had a child and his best friend was very famous, and you were taking them to the school train, and you went first, and they didn't come through and the train left, what would you immediately do?
Clearly
You
steal a
and
car and go flying.
no. If they were your children, you don't know where they are. You don't see them. They didn't come through. What would
Okay.
you do as the parent? Nothing?
I guess try and find them?
Apparently nothing. Like,
I don't
what?
know. That doesn't seem like a plot hole to me. Like,
Why?
because they very quickly were like, we're going to go steal a car.
Like, not that quick. Like, the
Anyway,
parents can
we're
do
way.
magic.
We need to move on. We're way past.
Sorry, we're way past this. Yep, this is true.
Yeah.
We'll speed through these. So you learn Swedish because it's a cool language. I learned Swedish. If I key information correctly, we are not the same. I have my lovely Malm thing, whatever that's called. This is a good meme format. I do like this one.
I like this one.
Comprehensible input go burr. I think it's more complicated than this, but you know.
I mean, I still hear people say like, "Oh, you can't learn a language as an adult."
Really?
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah, why do they have these weird fake languages on Duolingo? This is very weird.
Like Dutch.
Yeah, it's super fake. It's weird. It's really popular for some reason. 2.47. Have you heard Dutch? It's so fake. It's not real. I'm pulling up a Dutch sentence that I came across the other day. It is so fake. Sorry, Dutch people. Like,
Pouring out for the Dutch.
what was it? It's just so.
We got to keep this moving.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're already 30 minutes over.
I'm so distracted. I am. Yeah. Why are there so many memes? I keep expecting to be done.
How many, Bree? How many of these do you make?
Apparently 100. Yo, yes, it was. That was the one, Clayton. Het is koud in het slaapkamer. Anyways, yeah, Pacific Ocean has 3 different seas. I'm sorry to all of you English learners out there. That sucks.
Mm-hmm. And that is why you should use our English learning deck or English reading deck.
We go sounds first.
Yeah.
You're not some daddy's boy who tries to dolphin me and then blimps. I understand all of those words separately, but not together. I don't either. That is nonsense. Do cows moo in a different accent? Yes, fun fact. Cows have regional accents. We have moo, 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 and oi brov moo in it. Okay, that is the final meme. We have done
All right. We made it.
30
Touchdown.
memes. 4
Well
minutes.
done, Bree.
Wow, that was
Appreciate
fast.
it.
Thank you for the memes, Bree. That was fun. I'm sorry that took 45
Apologies to everybody on the line.
Yeah, we have done an oopsie. But that is everything for today's stream. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ethan, for accompanying me on this meme-filled journey of language goodness.
It's been a pleasure.
Have a
Un placer.
great rest. Un placer. Get the accent in there. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see
Cool.
you later.
Thanks everyone for the
Bye.
questions. Talk to y'all.